In close relation to the predominant inhumation rituals in archaic Greece, and perhaps also due to the influence of Middle Eastern conceptions of the afterlife below Earth, the notion of an underworldly realm of the dead is uncontested in archaic and classical Greece. Notions of an aerial afterlife upwards in ether begin to appear only in classical times, and they remained a minority until Platonism became widespread. So the first portraits of the Greek underworld offered by Homer depict a gloomy Hades where no real existence is worth living. As Achilles says in the Nekyia when Odysseus addresses him in the Odyssey, even the highest rank there in the world of the dead is worse than the lowest position upon earth among the living. This image of Hades, due to the traditional weight of Homeric poetry, remained authoritative for many centuries along antiquity, and I'm sure that Jan Brammer after me will dwell a bit more on that. However, from early classical times, there is multifarious evidence of an alternative vision of the underworld, where rewards for the just and punishment for the wicked are distributed. We may attribute, as the ancients often did, this novelty to Egyptian influences or to early Greek poetic tradition, perhaps even earlier, perhaps Indo-European traditions about mythical punishments for primordial sinners like Sisyphus and blessed isles for some heroes like Menelaus or in some traditions Achilles. However, rather than speculating about these origins, what I'm going to dwell on is the contents and impact of such ideas, which were by no means limited to a heroic past, but also to the personal destiny of our individual souls. Many Apulian kraters, found in tombs in the 4th century BCE, show these scenes of the underworld with the traditional wicked tortured, like Sisyphus over there, right, with his rock, right, and Tantalus is eating over there, and here is Heracles with fetching Cerberus, and Hades and Persephone are here in this Naiscos, ruling over this world. The Naiscos represents their royal dignity. Interestingly, in these Apulian kraters, you have Orpheus here singing his lyre as a mediator. These are perhaps the souls of the initiates, the Orphic initiates, if we may say so, that were led by him recommended to Hades and Persephone to find a blessed place in the underworld. There are many other kraters like this in München, in Naples. And likewise, there are some passages in Plato, in the Phaedo famously, and in some pseudo-Platonic dialogues like the Axiarchus, that show a distinction between the rewarded and the punishment, and the punished that may be projected to some earlier mystic ritual, as in this text of Plutarch, which says, "The soul suffers an experience similar to those who celebrate great initiations. To die and to be initiated," there's a wordplay here, teleutankai, telestai, are similar both in sound, the word, and in reality. Wandering astray in the beginning, tiresome walking in circles, some frightening paths in darkness that lead nowhere. Then immediately before the end, all the terrible things, panic and shivering and sweat and amazement. And then some wonderful light comes to meet you, pure regions and meadows, and there to greet you with sounds and dances and solemn sacred words and holy views. And there the initiate, perfect by now, set free and loose from all bondage, walks about, crowned with a wreath, celebrating the festival together with the other sacred and pure people. And he looks down on the uninitiated, unpurified crowd in this world in mud and fog beneath his feet, trampling itself down and crowded together for fear of death, remaining still sunk in its evils, unable to believe in the blessings that lie beyond. So Plutarch really differentiates the realm of the blessed, the realm of the condemned, linking it to the experience of the mysteries. Many other ancient authors mention one or even several poems telling how this underworld was. Most famously, the Catabasis of Orpheus, presumably in his quest for Eurydice. in which we may suppose that he would have described how this underworld was. Virgil, in the 6th book of the Aeneid, has Aeneas and the Sibyl going through this underworld and describes in detail the part of the Avernus where the condemned suffer, and the Elysium where the blessed are rejoicing. And it's very probable that among his sources of inspiration, because of course Virgil was not following slavishly any previous author, but among his sources of inspiration, we would have had these catabasis of Orpheus, catabasis of Heracles. But unfortunately, all these poems have been lost. There are only scraps of some late antique lines seeming to depict this underworld. What we have instead are inner descriptions that come precisely from the underworld. Gold tablets found in tombs in these 3 areas: southern Italy, northern Greece, and Crete. They have instructions, many of them in lines, in hexametric lines, to the soul on what to do when she arrives to the underworld. This is the longest one, Hipponion, whose text is this. This is the work, Hipponion is in Calabria, southern Italy. This is the work of memory. When you're about to die, you will go to Hades' wild halls. A spring is on the right, and by it stands a glowing white cypress tree. There the descending souls of the dead refresh themselves. Do not go near to this spring at all. Further on, you will find from the lake of memory refreshing water flowing forth. But guardians are nearby. They will ask you with sharp minds why you are seeking in the shadowy gloom of Hades. Say, I am the child of earth and starry heaven. I am parched with thirst and I perish, but give me quickly refreshing water to drink from the lake of memory. And then they will speak to the underworld ruler, Hades or Persephone, and they will give you to drink from the lake of memory. And you, having drunk, will go along the sacred roads that the other famed initiates and Bacchics travel. So, if the soul follows this instruction and drinks from the right spring and not the oblivion one, and if she says the right things, she will have a blessed destiny, right? In another series of tablets from Turi, in this case, in the other side of Calabria, well, there are several of them, you have this sort of text with small variations that I will not dwell on. Pure I come from the pure, queen of those below earth. And Euclid and Eubulus and other gods and demons. This is a sort of salutation to the underworldly gods. For I also claim that I am of your blessed race. Recompense I have paid on account of deed not just. Either fate master me or the lightning bolt thrown by the thunderer. Now I come suppliant to holy Persephone, that she gracious may send me to the seats of the blessed. And a third series of tablets in Pellina, northern Greece. This seems more like an Ivy leaf. Don't be misled by the heart shape. It's heart is a Disney thing. This is Ivy leaf, which is the Bacchic symbol, right? And it says something even more mysterious that only the initiate can understand. Now you have died and now you have been born, thrice blessed one on this very day. Say to Persephone that Bacchus himself freed you. A bull you rushed to milk. Quickly you rushed to milk. A ram you fell into milk. You have wine as your fortunate honor, and you will go beneath the earth, having celebrated rites just as the other blessed ones. All these tablets are dated more or less in the 4th, 3rd century BCE. These are some Cretan ones which are smaller, and they have some symbola. Sorry, I have just the Greek here. Symbols. Andrikipaidothyrson means nothing. Brimo seems to address Persephone. Brimo. Get into the sacred prairie. The initiate is free from punishment, apoinos. And, well, some more which are briefer. To Pluto and Persephone. To Hades and Persephone. Salute. Now, these are the tablets, right? And they pose several questions, which I will address very briefly. They might be all summarized in one question. Do they deserve to be called Orphic? Well, there's one level of interpretation, which would these lines have been, these hexametric lines, these verses, belong to an ancient poem written by Orpheus? Might be, but we don't know. This is not the question. The question is whether they can be interpreted according to the other pieces of evidence, which we call Orphic, because it deals with the destiny of the soul under some specific ideas. Most importantly, the ancestral fault that the soul claims to have been liberated from. If you remember, it said, I have paid the pain for unjust deeds, and I also claim to be of your blessed race. This, if we think that they refer to the same conceptual world, would refer to the so-called myth of the Titans, according to which the Titans tore Dionysus apart and ate him. Zeus, upon seeing this, threw his bolt over the Titans, and from these ashes come the mankind, who have a Titanic part and a Dionysiac part. The Dionysiac part, namely the soul, has to be liberated from the punishment that the Titanic part, namely the body, is suffering. And this liberation is attained through ritual and through behavior and perhaps through ascetic practices and so on. In this case, we could interpret it according to some other texts, like this fragment of Pindar, 5th century BCE, which says, those from whom Persephone receives the recompense for the ancient grief, poinan, as the tablets had, they go above, to the sun above their souls in the 9th year she sends back. And from them arise glorious king and men swift with strength and very great in wisdom. And in time to come, they are called sacred heroes among them. So there are some debates about this, whether all the tablets have the Titanic myth behind them, or perhaps it is very Greek to leave this ancestral fault which we are paying in an allusive way. So it might be the Titanic myth, there might be some other fault that our ancestors or we ourselves have committed. But there's a third level of interpretation, and I'm concluding, which is, can we use the tablets to interpret other sorts of evidence, like the so-called Tumba del Tuffatore, also 5th century BCE in Paestum, southern Italy, where the grave shows this diving into an eternal banquet. Some archaeologists say, no, this is just a decoration. Some others will say, and I believe them, this is a pictorial representation of the conceptual world of the tablets, according to which the initiate can be reborn and deified, as we found in the tablets. So all these questions are debatable. However, this conception that we call Orphic influenced Platonic dialogues and the whole Platonic tradition. And through Platonic tradition, it influenced both Virgil and Christian eschatology and the innumerable literature and art depending on these two traditions, from Dante onwards, right? So for better or for worse, the Orphic Underworld planted a seed in Western tradition that would grow and flourish into an exuberant forest like the one surrounding us on this beautiful place. And taxa miket von den Uppmärksamkeit.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. What do I have to do to get into this underworld? It sounds very pleasant, like to look down on everyone. Is it just like a computer game? I have to know the right thing to say, the right way to go? Or do I have to become a certain kind of person?
That's a very good question that also the Greeks asked. For some, just faith mattered. For others, works also were important. Sounds Pauline, right? But Plato, for example, says all these initiators, they have just a ritual deliverance of sin, of guilt, of pollution. So they have a very automatic answer. They would say, just do the ritual, get initiated, learn the passwords, and that's it. He proposes a much purer view of initiation and of deliverance from contamination and ancestral faults that we have inherited as individuals or as a human race, which is what he calls the Orphic life, Orphikos bios in the laws. Mainly, perhaps, vegetarianism, that's linked with Pythagorean beliefs in transmigration, also perhaps a certain respect for justice, oaths, and this sort of thing. But it's a debate that is permanent all along antiquity, and I would say even further, right?
Yeah, it's still there in Christianity and after, so
True.
now I know. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.